Wonderful. Thank you. And welcome, everybody, to our council meeting. It is now 4:01. Welcome. And we'll start and call to order with our land acknowledgement. As we gather today, I'd like to acknowledge on behalf of council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We'd like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and our support for their rich history and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. Would there be any declarations of pecuniary interest? None being heard. Moving on to confirmation of council agenda.
That council adopt the agenda for the December 3rd, 2024 regular council meeting.
Moved by, thank you, Councillor Humphrey, seconded by Councillor Webster. All in favor? Thank you very much, gentlemen. And we'll move on to a delegation that we have for a public meeting, and so appreciate Chair Rob Tripp from the Renfrew and Area Ontario Provincial Police Board being here with us today. Rob, we do have a number of questions, but I would love if we could to start with you to share a little bit with us about the new detachment board, if you could, and maybe give us some summary of the board itself before we dive in. Thank you.
Perfect, thank you, and fully understandable with questions. Every council within our team of 7 have gone through this process. And this is a very new initiative for all of us, so questions are both appreciated and well received. This legislation is completely new. It came into effect in April 1, and it repealed the old police board, or police services board regulations and act. And this new community policing act
Do we believe it's on Chair Tripp's side versus ours? Okay. Well, let's give it a moment and see if that resolves itself. And if possible, perhaps he's able to go off video to allow an audio conversation. Wonderful, thank you, and do apologize for some of the technical challenges we've just had and restarting again, so welcome back. We are reconvened, and Rob, thank you so much for staying with us and being available. I do apologize, you were in the middle of starting to explain the intent behind the detachment board, and if you could restart that, that would be most appreciated.
Okay, perfect, thank you. So at a very high level, this new legislation, the Community Police Services Act, is a new piece of legislation that really puts an emphasis on policing having a closer tie to the community, both in terms of us as community agencies and municipalities in providing input into the policing in terms of what we feel as priorities, and for the police to have a venue through which they can report back to us on their operational elements of their programs and how it relates to meeting our priorities. It's a different type of approach, and it's very much in its infancy. It was brought in on April 1st, and we are now taking the first year really just to unpack it with a hope of starting in January with unpacking some of the priorities that we have. The legislation provides for a very narrow mandate. We are there to provide priorities to the policing detachment commander for his or her consideration in the operationalization within the police force. We don't have an authority or a space in the operations of policing. Our role is really as that community oversight and community liaison aspect. We are responsible to provide assistance and input into the selection of a detachment commander, and to monitor their performance in terms of meeting the priorities as identified by the board, speaking on behalf of the municipalities that the board serves. So in our case, there are 7 municipalities. We have 7 representatives, and they are board members. They come to the board, in your case through Glenn, leaving his house as a councillor under the municipal legislation, but arriving in the room switches roles to become a board member under a piece of legislation that reports directly to the Solicitor General. So it's an independent civilian oversight board. And that's taken some time to get our head around because it's a differential role. So there's 7 of us sitting as board members from the municipalities. We have 2 community members who were selected through a process under the legislation, and we have 2 vacant positions that are expected to be filled in the new year, and they are appointees from the province. So we'll have a total of 4 from outside the municipal sector, and then 7 of us at that table. The police board budget falls under the legislation, and we are asked to present to the 7 municipalities a budget for the annual operational costs of the board as part 1. And part 2 is to identify the honorarium costs, that of which the board pays to the sitting directors for their honorarium at the meetings. We've included in this budget the 2 together just for simplicity because it's our first round at this, which is why the first section talks about board member honorarium, and then the bottom part really talks about the operational side of the budget. To develop the budget, it was a challenge because we don't have anything to go on. This is brand new, starting at ground zero. We've built this in discussion with other similar OPP police service boards in Ontario. We've spoken with the ministry and consulted with both the Inspector General Department, which is the team that's ultimately responsible for providing the assurance that the legislation is being met, and also officials within the policy side of the SolGen. So through all of those conversations is how we landed on the budget. We've discussed it at a finance committee at the board level and then at the board table. There's 2 parts to the budget, and this gets into something which will be some of the questions about funding. The legislation, as it stands now, prescribes that the budget shall be split equally between all 7, in our case, all 7 municipalities. There's a caveat to that if the municipalities can agree on a unanimous alternative to equal share, it can be considered by the board or directed by the municipalities. In absence of that unanimous, it falls to a budget of equal share. That is, I suspect, where a lot of the questions will come, as we have in other discussions with municipalities, and then the actual numbers of the budget. And we kept this as close to a sharp pencil as we can. Our goal with this is to have this passed so that starting in January, we can get operational with the board and start knocking off some of our mandates. We will commit to providing at a quarterly basis to all 7 municipalities, the actuals to the budget. So each quarter we'll be able to see how we are on target. At the 6-month point in June, we're suggesting a more robust discussion because we'll have had 6 months under our belt to really identify how the finances of the board is going to look both for this year and then going forward, and gives us a chance to start thinking about the 26 budget. So we're not rushing at the last quarter of the year as we are in this situation to move a budget through. So in June, we're hoping to have a more realistic, so maybe we change that word. This is a realistic budget, but a more defined budget to actuals and to expectations once we get into operating. So I'll stop there. As I said, there's 2 elements: the board honorarium, which is at the top, totaling $17,442, and then we get into the operational and governance costs. So I'll stop there if there's any questions to that level, or if we just want to roll into the questions, I'm happy to help with that as well.
Thank you. I really appreciate the summary brought back to us. We had discussed it at various councils, and certainly the latest being the November 5th council meeting. We did review a number of these elements. I'll look out to my fellow councillors, though, to see if anybody has any questions to start the conversation. Yeah, Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your presentations, Mr. Tripp, so far. A question in regards to, and I was kind of answered during our council meeting, is that this employee that is going to be employed by the Police Services Board solely, is there all policies and code of conducts and all that set up already for that person to be hired under?
That is a fabulous question. So short answer is yes. The code of conduct has been in place. The board let me just take a moment and pause here for a second. The board, unlike traditional committees of municipalities, which are covered by insurance through the municipal structure, this board, independent of the Municipal Act, did not provide directors and officers or insurance for the board members. So we were very cautious in what we could take on as activities in the first few months. So for the first 4 months, all we did was policy development, writing codes of conduct, terms of reference, the very basic policies that didn't have a litigious or a liability exposure to us until such time as the insurance came in. We've also been talking to other municipalities because there's a plethora. There's the code of conduct and the very core basic HR policies that we need, but there's a plethora of new policies we're going to need as we roll forward. So we're working collaboratively with other police services boards, trying to develop policies that are generic enough that we can exchange between different services boards to make it a little bit more effective and certainly more economically efficient, that we're not all sitting in individual silos writing policies. But your short answer is yes, we have the procedures and the policies in place for HR. And part of that position is to further develop ongoing policies as well.
Okay, great, thank you. And then just to follow up on, in the 6-month review of the budgetary items, so we've received some correspondence from a fellow township close by in regards to numbers and everything else. So this equal share. Is that open for negotiation again at the 6-month mark for next year's budget? Is that correct? Is that how I read that?
Absolutely. And that's our purpose for this 6-month discussion, is I feel that we as 7 municipalities can come up with a model with a bit of time to think it through and to have discussions. We can come up with a model that I think serves everybody, because we're in a very unique and unusual position. I have 2 hats. One is chair of the board, but also as a municipal councillor. As chair of the board, the legislation is clear that it is an equal share unless an alternative is landed on with the 7 municipalities. With my municipal hat, I recognize within our team of 7, there is a wide range of dispersity between the economic foundation and the tax base. So it's not about looking just at existing OPP funding models, because that's really for policing. This is about governance. And I think we can get creative between the larger municipalities and the smaller municipalities to come up with something that's a little bit more equitable for all, not necessarily relying just on an existing formula based on service delivery. But we do need to recognize that this has a big impact on 2 of our municipalities within the team of 7 that have very, very small, have a different challenge in the capacity of funding. So that's a big part of what we'll be discussing at the halfway point is, and I'm hoping at that point you'll also have an understanding of the value for service, value for money, because we'll be able to report back the relationship with the OPP and talk about seeing some of the priorities that we have in our individual areas being heard through that process. But June is certainly a time to have that conversation. We're not locking in. The decision now does not lock us in going forward. It could be an annual discussion.
Well, great. Thank you for that. And I look forward to your being chair to help the smaller municipalities out with the cost sharing there moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Yes, Councillor Humphreys.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Tripp, for your presentation. Yes, I know it's a difficult position as you start a new thing, or you're build as you go, like Lego blocks for this organization. And it's always good to have different ideas coming to the table whenever you meet. So, and I think we have a pretty good team of your board there, a good cross section of people and the public members that we have got in there too. So this is a really interesting meeting I've learned a lot just listening to how it's rolling out. So, and you got a big challenge ahead of you till we meet that halfway point, and the costing, they talk about how many thousands of dollars it's going to cost each township, and small ones and big ones. So I appreciate this background, so I better handle on what's going on right now. So thank you again for this presentation.
You're very welcome. And just as an example for the discussion in 6 months, we're only 2 months into kind of getting ready for the 25 start. And in the budget, we put insurance at 5,000 and professional service fees. The membership for the Ontario Association of Police Services Boards at 3,000. The actual for the membership is now 5,400. And the insurance is down to 3,800. So there is flexibility. We'll see a lot of change between now and the 6 months. But what we did not want to see happen is to carve this too close to the line that we realize halfway through the year we can't meet our mandate, which looks bad on all of us. But we wouldn't want to be in a position to have to come back to councils halfway through a budget term looking for additional funds. We would rather come through this with a little bit of a buffer, and that's why we had the contingency at the bottom. An important part of the contingency in this discussion at the 6-month mark and also in our final quarter, if we end up the year in a surplus, the board will be recommending one of 2 options. We either take the surplus and put it into a reserve and that future budgets going forward would not have a contingency because we'd have that buffer in reserve. If it is a very large reserve, we would look at a percentage return, that we would keep a 10% surplus and return the rest based on the funding formulas to the municipalities. So we've tried to create a prudent scenario with an end game that we can hopefully in future budgets not have a contingency and rely on the surplus from this year.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Any supplemental, Councillor Humphries? None? None heard? To echo my colleagues, thank you so much. This has been very helpful. Our Glenn, as representative, has been wonderful as well. If I may, there are a few items that, I hope it's well understood. I think you've inferred to it, but certainly as a township, paying equal share to some of our neighboring townships is a very hard aspect to swallow. I'm mindful that the police board mandate from the province, I think in their haste to release that, included that in the current legislation. So within the building up the board and getting over that mountain towards operating, I would encourage, if we can, looking for some refinements back to the OPP from a provincial level, not the least of which is equal billing. That's there. But also, if I may, to give a bit of feedback and maybe ask for your opinion on as well, is the remuneration aspect. I'm mindful to taking hats off, leaving your council and attending on the board, relative to, however, still playing the role and still representing the township. So remuneration, I'd appreciate that. I know there's been some other debate publicly on that as well. The other one is travel. Some of the intent of this board was that to encourage the locale or the proximity to the police board to eliminate the need for travel. So it's a small number, but when we look at budgets like the Horton Township, they add up. So I'd be mindful to that. And then the administrative role, I love to hear that you're saying at 6 months, we'll be looking to maybe refine that or reset that. If at the 6 month, if you can predict what the ongoing would be. I'm very mindful that you're right at grassroots of buying laptops, setting up workspaces, setting up web space. Even your location of your board meetings, I understand, is still up in the air. So appreciate maybe some of your feedback. I'll pause there for some of your feedback as areas to continue to refine.
Okay, perfect. So I'll start first with the board honorariums. This has been a discussion from day one with all police services boards. The legislation provides that board members shall be provided with an honorarium. And the standard that the ministry is looking at was $150 per meeting. The intent was, or the minimum number of meetings that the board can have in a year is 4. That's kind of unrealistic in terms of meeting our mandate. We're hoping to get down meeting every second month. So we budgeted on every second month, and then a couple of committee meetings throughout the term for those sitting on committees. It's legislated, so it's a little bit challenging for us. And that's been the heart of the discussion at the board tables, both with our board, but other boards, and with the association. The association, the Ontario Association of Police Services Board, did a survey monkey to all police boards. It was a relatively small sample survey, but most boards came out in line with the $150 per meeting. Some were as high as $400 or $500 a meeting, which I personally find odd. But I think they're trying to distinguish the fact that it's an independent board that's going to stand accountable to the Inspector General in terms of compliance with the legislation, is the best I can give on how we landed on the number. The chair honorarium goes with the individual in the chair, and it recognizes the extra. Oh, did we lose me?
Apologies, Rob, your
That's
audio
all
was
right.
coming through fine, but the video wasn't, so I've just
Okay,
stopped it
that's
and
fine.
restarted it. Sorry about that, Rob. Thank
No
you.
worries. So the chair honorarium is at 400. I suspect that will change going into 26, but the level of work for all police services boards in getting this set up has been rather intense. It's certainly 3 times the amount of work I would do in my role as a counselor at Greater Madawaska. And then the employer costs. We're not sure about employer costs, but we put it in the budget just to have it there as a place marker. We expect that this will be an honorarium and not subject to traditional employment costs. So again, that's something that we'll discuss at the 6-month part. The travel, the mileage, we put that in order to have it there if board members wish. We will be meeting at the police detachment in their boardroom for 25 going forward. We've been meeting at Renfrew Council. For most of us, we don't put in claim because it's a very short drive, but there are those out in the outlying areas that Whitewater, for example, where it is a bit of a drive to come in for the meetings. And then conferences, Zone 2 meetings would be like an executive group of all of the police services boards in our part of Eastern Ontario. And it's to provide the mileage for them to drive down to the meetings. The meetings are free, so there's no cost, but it's a really good opportunity to network and to share experiences, certainly in the first year as we get to develop best practices of other boards and sharing concerns that we have with other boards, like the billing model, for example, where we can sit as a group within a zone meeting and then bring that forward to the association that can take it forward to the ministry. And then we have money in for the conference. The conferences are really essential. It is where all the board members, where all the police services boards come together. It would be the equivalent of our Roma. And we send a small delegation. Usually it's the chair. We feel it would be important for a community member to be there, a member of the OPP, and a committee member. In our case right now, finance, because we're building so many models around the budgeting. So that's the travel. When we drop down to the administrator, there's been a lot of discussion around this. And I think in some cases, the initial thought went to this would be the individual who'd be taking the minutes at the meeting. This is really the equivalent of a town clerk. This is the person who will organize, structure, coordinate agendas, work with board members to make sure that things are moving and flowing through them into the agenda, but also monitoring the policy measures coming out of the Ontario Association and working with the ministry to keep us current on emerging trends in our first year. So it's a combination of someone who will handle the traditional clerk's role, but also as a junior policy analyst that would help us keep abreast of trends as they're coming. And there's a lot of negotiation back and forth in our first year with the ministry on everything from the funding models to how are we going to report back in to our 7 municipalities. They will also handle the administration and coordination of the development of a strategic plan, which we're mandated for in this first year, as well as a robust annual report, which will come out in June. We're also suggesting we'll do a quick high-level report to municipalities every quarter when we produce the budget to actuals, and then also to manage the website. So it's a fairly robust position. We're looking for somebody ideally who is retired and interested in doing taking this on as a project, because the salary is certainly not going to be reflective of the skill level that we're looking for. But we feel there are people out there, and that's also in line with what other boards have been doing in the first year to see how things roll.
Okay. Thank you. You are providing just a wealth of information. I appreciate the elaboration on every point, Rob. I'll make just one more comment and then an ask of you as well. Is a comment is within the quarterly reports and the 6-month report, it would be lovely as well of when we're getting off the ground, the value that you spoke to earlier of how this board will be driving value into the community, and that community engagement part of it. I'd love to be learning more of that as we move forward, because I'm mindful that as the board has started to get going, we've been focusing a lot on, the legislation and some of the challenges the legislation has provided. And I dare say the community benefit hasn't been focused on. So I would ask if we can do that. The last one is very tactically, is asking what motion should be coming forward in front of Horton. I don't know that you've got an answer to that right now, but look forward to your guidance on what needs to come in front of Horton, given the 6-month reset and the various aspects that we've spoken to. Thank you.
Okay. To the reporting, and your comment about we've been spending our time to date looking at the legislation, which is very accurate. The exciting work is ahead of us, and I think we all at our respective tables are going to recognize the value of this piece of legislation and the board. What's been suggested by other boards, and it's starting to roll out in other communities, is a SurveyMonkey instrument out to managed within our respective municipalities, but out to our ratepayers, asking them what their perceptions are of policing and their services, what they would like to see, gaps they're seeing. Now, it'll be a lot of raw data, but it's an opportunity for our ratepayers to have an input and a say, collaborated up into and assimilated into a document that's going to highlight a set of key themes that will be presented to the detachment commander, saying, at your feet now are a list of key priorities that we as your service area feel as important to be implemented into your operational plan. So that's phase one. Ratepayers will start to be able to feel they have an input and a say, and well, it will be collated. Hopefully those priorities presented to the OPP, which is transparent and open and public, they will see their voice in that document. So they're going to feel that they have a voice at that table, which is new in policing. It's not going to be without challenges, because it is also very difficult for police now to have to take outside suggestions. And that I think will be part of our challenge in the first 6 months. The second part of that is the OPP reporting back to us. We do not need a list of how many offenses were raised this weekend or what the ride results were. We're looking for policy trends, shift in neighborhoods, attitudes on policing, trends in crime, and also an explanation as to why some of their resources may not appear to be equally distributed across the town or across our detachment area. For example, if there is a large B&E in one area and they're directing resources to break that cycle, which will impact other municipalities. That's the narrative we're hoping to see from the OPP. Again, back to our ratepayers seeing value for their support of this board and the piece of legislation. The OPP is working on a different reporting system now, so they will be coming out with a different type of report, which will be consistent from all detachments across the province. So we'll be able to, again, share all of that data back with their community, and also having everything on the website. So people will have on our website, there will be a link to each of the municipalities, but also a link to all of the information, the reports, the strat plans, for them to see. So the reporting is going to be more than just a 2 or 3 page document that lands on a shelf. We're hoping we can put some effort into telling the story of the importance of the board and how we're having our voice in terms of the policing priorities.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Rob. I appreciate that. And I look forward to that community involvement, not the least of which are some of the drug offense activities going on in our overall county. And I look forward to some of the legislation shifting as we get better at this for years to come, that we are not having to hold our nose and hold a equal payment. That said, I believe Councillor Campbell, you've got a question.
I do, and thank you, Deputy Mayor Proctor. And thank you, Chair Tripp, for joining us tonight.
Glenn?
I must speak highly of Rob. When we first looked for someone to step up for chair, you could hear the squeaking of his chair right away. We knew he was one who wanted to lead us into battle, and certainly has shown that he's the right individual for the job. And his co-chair is equally as knowledgeable in Scott Broom, who I attended a conference with on Friday for our Zone 2 conference. And kind of echoing, we're kind of slow getting started, but that's just the way the training modules we had to complete, the process of choosing our public members, the meet and greets, trying to follow our mandates as led by, as Mr. Tripp took us through and made it quite easy to go through. Then representing, the difference between the board member and the township, that we leave one hat behind and pick up the other hat. So it's kind of difficult not to express your opinion. We're not quite there yet. So once we got the a budget started, and it was a ping pong match there, because we're looking at, yes, two smaller townships here saying, wait a minute, and some of the others saying, well, this is really good with equal billing. So there's been discussion on that. So as the changes kept coming, it seemed you can feel the energy building in our board, wanting to start voicing our opinions, and our web page, and getting out there in the community. But we're still have slow music playing right now, that we're trying to learn the dance, and everybody's on the same page. But once we do get momentum built, and as you said, the first of the new year should make several changes, and we can, once we're set up and moving in the right direction, monetarily, financial budget, we'll know better where we're sitting. The board members will be all trained. The policies that we're going to be looking at, we'll prioritize and start making our mark. And then that relationship, as you said, Rob, that it's a different, the shoe's on the other foot now as far as the board, and our role with the OPP. So that mix still has to, come forth. So I know you've got lots of challenges. I know you're going community to community like you are tonight to answer our questions. Again, the Zone 2 meeting I attended was good to do some sharing of concerns, and I know Rob voiced his opinion well to the director of some of the concerns he had as well. And the potential of some funding coming down, we'll just leave that for now until we hear differently. And I believe, and it was said that I guess Renfrew board we're actually a little bit further ahead. You've led us through some of the hurdles quickly, and that we're in good standing and good shape for some of the other boards at the Zone 2 meeting that are far behind from what we are right now. So I thank you for that. So yes, I look forward to the meetings ahead, and coming out and actually meeting with the communities, and again, putting that board hat on and saying we are here representing the townships, but there's very little feedback yet until we get our feet off the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And to be clear, I'm just the chair. I'm like the orchestra leader. We have a wonderful team, so it is by no means me doing all of this. We're in this together, and everybody has been chipping in and taking on projects. So it's a very easy thing to do when you have a very strong and committed and collaborative team. So we work as a very well and oiled, efficient team of 9 right now. So, but thank you for that. In terms of the motion, what most are doing is putting a motion, first and foremost, to approve the budget as presented. And then some municipalities have put forward a budget that they would just approve or recognize the legislation in terms of equal billing, with the intent to discuss at 7 months or 6 months options for alternative funding for the next year. That part gets a little bit gray because the legislation is quite clear. It defaults to it defaults to a shared billing model. There is an opportunity to register with the board and then ultimately with the ministry, the SolGen mediation request. But that is a very timely and very expensive that is borne by all of us. And the concern is at the end, the legislation and the regulations provide that the minister can come in and just decree what the budget will be and a payment model. So we're hoping for acceptance of both budget and the billing at this stage. And that with that commitment that we're in this together for the first, well, going forward, not just the first year, but certainly the first year in terms of shaping something that's more equitable. Also important to know that the ministry is aligned with this. They recognize that this is not a fair situation. And they recognize a number of the oversights that no one quite honestly thought of. People in the SolGen have no experience in the municipal world. So they're recognizing there's an awful lot of room for changes. It's difficult to open up legislation. I would suggest almost impossible, but regulations are very flexible. And thankfully, the funding formulas fall within the regulations. And there's a very strong voice to the ministry now to look at, over the next year, adjusting that to provide us with greater opportunity at this level to do something that's more, in rural communities, certainly more equitable. No one saw this coming. You know, they built this in Toronto, looking at large cities where they would have deep reserves that could absorb. They're not looking at small rural communities where every dollar has to count. And we're all looking at large levies. The other element for this year, and only for this year, is we're having some relief on the police service budgeting. They're two completely unrelated elements, but it does give us a little bit of wiggle room for this first year, but with a very clear mandate and message from us as a board that we'll work through 25 to make sure 26 is not brought on at the 11th hour to us and we're in this situation. So I'll stop there. Unless
Thank
there's
you.
other questions or...
Thank you. I'll ask council any further questions. None being heard. Rob, thank you so much. I do appreciate you taking the time with us.
You're welcome.
We'll be tabling any motion until the following, so that we can consolidate a report and bring towards a motion reflective of the comments and the information that you've shared with us today. Thank you.
Perfect. And I'm happy for bilaterals as needed through your process. So I'm available.
I appreciate that, and thank you for your patience during our technical challenges.
No problem.
Thank you. Have a great evening. We will resume
Okay.
back onto our agenda for the sites. Council, thank you, Rob.
Thank you.
Cheers. All right, moving on to our council agenda, we move on to section 6, minutes from previous meetings. Section 6.1, page 4 would be our November 19th meetings. Would I have a mover to adopt those meeting minutes? Thank you very much, Chair, or Councillor Campbell, and seconded by Councillor Webster. Appreciate that. All in favor? Thank you. Were there any business arising from minutes? None being heard. We'll move on to section 8, and now I will be going to Chair Campbell for section 8.11.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Proctor. On 8.1.1, page 6 of your package, you'll see the November building report. I would have liked to have seen that just across the next run up to 10 to, or at least try and beat 2022, but that's where we are. Strong, a strong year nonetheless. Any questions or concerns on the building report? I'm sure the spring will bring lots more in. If there's no questions or concerns, we'll go to page 7, open planning files as of November 29th, 24, and look at the small amount we have on here. So I took a walk through it as well to see, again, we're seeing completed, we're seeing applicant completed conditions are being required. I think they're getting knocked off pretty quick. They're getting knocked off, let's say. Are there any questions on the planning file report? Deputy Mayor Proctor.
Thank you, Chair. Mindful to one of the largest planning items that the council has faced in the last little while with the Tomlinson pit submission, that I understand that it's been through Ontario Land Tribunal and a decision was provided, I think a week and a half ago. Wondered if you had any commentary or any recommendation or anything to share with council relative to that.
I have not. I'll go through the CAO. Have you anything to report on that?
Sure. So as we know, through the Ontario Land Tribunal, the matter is now closed and moving forward. The zoning bylaw amendment has passed through the Ontario Land Tribunal. It does not come to the council table any
Okay.
longer. So now it's a matter of if council wishes to issue a statement, I'd like direction to staff to provide that. And we are still very limited on what we can provide, but there are some documents that are available to the public online through the Ontario Land Tribunal. So if, as I said, if council wishes to issue a statement or the chair of planning committee, please direct staff to do so, and I can create something and send it to council for review before we publish it, or not.
I guess I am the chair. So I think whatever information we can give back, we had 2 public meetings. So any information we can disclose, I think we should at least give a statement back. You know, it involves a lot of ratepayers around the site, and I think they're, you know, they should be given every piece of information that publicly should be given. That's my opinion. Thank you.
If I may, as supplemental, I wholeheartedly would agree with that, and I'm glad, I guess is the word, that the Ontario Land Tribunal did see fit to accept our minutes of settlement as we had settled with Tomlinson. And I'm looking forward to Tomlinson being a good member of our community and contributing to our community. All the same, it's not lost on me that the decisions of council back in the 80s and the bylaws put in place to protect some of our residents were not sufficient to the provincial planning. I think all of us learned quite a few lessons from that, but I would wholeheartedly agree with you, Chair Campbell, on putting out a message to our residents and sharing with them some of the updates that we were successful in gaining to change the application. And as much information as we have on when that application might turn into dirt moving and trucks driving. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. And any other councillors' input? Councillor Webster?
Thank you, Chair. I guess the only other thing with our correspondence out to the public is maybe add the links to the tribunal board that they can do the full read about. Just that there's nothing, we're not trying to hide anything, being transparent here. This is what we, how we worked it all out. That we can share. Thank you.
No? Well asked. Okay. All right, well, thank you everyone for your input. And at least that step has been put to bed for now. So on page 9, 8.1.3 staff report, conveyance of former road allowance request. I'll turn that over to CEO Dillabo.
Thank you. So through you, Chair, as most of you are aware, we do have an old historical bylaw from 1859 that had originally closed sections of road allowance known as, I believe it was the Opeongo Line. And previously, we have had residents that own property adjacent to this road allowance request that they can convey a portion, whether it's 33 feet or 66 feet, depending on how their properties lie, of that road allowance onto their property, due to it having been closed by the Council of 1859. So Council has previously set precedent by approving these requests, as well as honoring the bylaw and paying 25% of the survey costs, as well as the transfer of the property, due to it not having been properly conveyed back in the late 1800s. So we do have a request on the table from James Lockwood, who has recently purchased property on River Road and is right adjacent to that piece of the unopened road allowance, as you can see on the attached map. The property owner on the other side was asked if they were interested in conveying that piece as well at this time, and they said they are, but not currently right now, said they'd like to wait in the future. So the request for Mr. Lockwood is for the 33 feet adjacent to his property.
Okay, fair enough. Questions from council? So again, it has been standard practice, and if I'm glad that the other adjacent property owners has spoken up, and so it's on file that he's interested in at a later date. Because as you know, if it wasn't the request for the 33, if the other individual wasn't interested in it, the 66-foot proportion could be included in this. So if there's no further question, Deputy Mayor Proctor.
Thank you so much. A number of items in this have concerned me. One is the review of 10-1859 and not having that available to be reviewed, and the nuances of it. I don't feel equipped to be making any decision on this request because I don't have that bylaw to review to understand the nuances of it. I'm also aware that having looked into this when we received this agenda package last week, there have been a number of decisions made relative to bylaw 10-8159 that have not aged well. They have not aged well, not the least that's not lost on me that in 1859 many aspects have not aged well. Since then, 1859, my life would have been very different than it is today. So it would be my request if we could look into 1859 specifically as council before being asked to make decision, and also alignment to the bylaw that we passed last year of 2023-23 about unopened road allowances having permitted use of them, not necessarily being transferred. And I'm mindful to how those support each other, as opposed to, so that there's clear direction for a consistent and transparent use of unopened road allowances and when they would be deemed or transferred to a adjacent property owner and when they would be simply allowed to be accessed. So that would be my ask, to do a little bit more homework and understand this further before we're asked to make any decision on it. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Fair enough. Mr. Johnson.
Okay, I'm very familiar with this bylaw because it was me that discovered it back when I was the mayor. And right now, I'm sitting, we have, at one end of my property, I have my daughter who incorporated this road allowance, but we had to survey it, got a PIN number for it and so on. On the other end, I sold a lot down at the Humphreys Road end to Jeff McLeod, and we had to do the same thing. Now I'm in the middle with about 1,800 feet of this road allowance that's in my property since 1859, and I don't intend to have to pay to survey it. It should be in my property because it was given to Clark, Farrell, and Johnson by that bylaw. So why are you talking about 33 feet going to each person? It's not 33 feet going to each person. The whole 66 feet is going to the three landowners at that time, which was Clark, where I am, Johnson, where Draper is, and Farrell, where the landing is. So I don't know what we're talking about here, basically. Like, if I go to sell my property, I don't have to turn around and survey that because it was given to me 100 and some years ago. I had to do it because I sold property at each end, but I should not have to do it in the middle, and that property still should be mine. So what's your comments to that?
Chair Campbell?
Hope, you can go ahead, sorry.
So-
CEO Hope.
So from what I believe from the bylaw in 1859, it was never properly surveyed or conveyed to any of the property owners, even though the bylaw passed by council at that time said that they were going to do it, which is why now this has come forward multiple times, because it never was properly done back in 1859. So that's why when these requests come forward, we take them on a case-by-case basis instead of going and doing the entire length of the road allowance. But to kind of echo Deputy Mayor Proctor's comments, I can certainly bring that 1859 bylaw back. To be fair, it is very difficult to read as it is handwritten out in the old script. But we can try to transcribe it to give all of you information. And then I can provide a list too of the case-by-cases that I've seen since I've been here that we have accommodated. The requests come through, but they all do need to be properly surveyed, pinned, and registered to be then complete on another parcel of property, because right now it is still separate on an unopened road allowance parcel of property. And then to the other point about the unopened road allowance use and separate bylaw, so technically this section of the road allowance is closed in 1859, and then the other bylaw to discuss about the use, authorizing use of the unopened road allowances are the ones that are unopened, yet owned by the municipality still. It's kind of, but I can certainly bring back a report that shows the difference between the two bylaws and issues, basically, with that.
Mr. Johnson?
Okay, the thing is, right now, I don't intend to spend 1 cent on surveying that road allowance, because that road allowance was on my farm for 100 and some years. So, and the fence is right there, like, it's 66 feet. The fence is on the north side, that whole roadway from 7th Concession right to the river. All right? So there's 66 feet of that road that goes to me, 66 that goes to Johnston's, and 66 feet goes to Farrell. So this dividing 33 feet doesn't make sense to start with. Like, if this road allowance here beside the, down at the Red Door Lane, property owned by James Lockwood, is showing the blue dotted line where the fence is, okay? And that roadway is completely in the Johnston property. But I know this is all, like, this, in this case, is different because Johnson has property on both sides. He's got the property on the James Lockwood side, and he's got the property on the other side. So it's a different story than what I'm situated in, because from the edge of my property down to the Johnson property, that was all in the Clark property, which is my property. So I don't know what happens if I go to sell mine. I don't think it matters a darn whether I have a PIN number for that or not, unless, you know, I go to do something, because the fence is there, and the fence always is number one in land survey. If there's a fence there, that's the rule. It doesn't matter a damn what anybody else says. That's the way where it goes. Like, when I got into the lawsuit up at Garden Lake, it was the same thing. When that was surveyed back in 1929, that roadway was in that property.
Right.
And when I bought a survey book with $90 to read all that stuff. And the survey rules is wherever the original line went, if there's blazes if there was all of these rock cairns and so on, that is the law. You can't start moving it. Okay, anyways.
So I
I don't
can't,
want to make a mountain out of a molehill, but it's just that, like I said, at both ends of my property, I had to survey that property. So
Right.
maybe the township wants to give me back the money it cost me to survey that property in both ends.
so
but
I
I doubt it.
I can't speak to survey regulations, I'm not a surveyor, but it has been past practice that we have offered the 33 feet to the adjacent property owners to the unopened road allowances.
Right, in a normal situation, that is correct.
Yes, and
Because the line
this
was
is-
on the 33-foot mark, not on the 0. So this is where the fence is. This is, the center of that road is all in my property, and so is the other 30. So there's 66 feet in my property. And there's 66 feet here on the section, but unfortunately, like I say, in this case of the Johnson place, the property on the north side, or the south side of River Road is now owned by the Balkers, and they own all that property. So, like, it doesn't make much sense to give half of it to him and half it to somebody else. It should be, he should be, that if he bought that land, he should have what he's got, and the other part is in the Balkers' part on the other side.
All right, well,
Anyways,
thank you, Mr. Johnson. I think, again, we, as suggest, we'll, let's bring forth the bylaw for review. And it's a good topic of discussion for the council. You know, it's, again, as we deal with it on a case-by-case basis, and yes, everyone's a little unique of where is the actual road allowance? Is it fully on a property, or does it split a property? And that's where the difference does fall in. But I think, you know, certainly let's bring it forward so that this council is, you know, all on the same page and full committee to sit in on this. And we value your input, Mr. Johnson, as being of having found this originally. Any other questions on?
Just one, Chair Campbell. No, we've dealt with this before, like some of the properties like on Early Road, that one owner owned the bottom section of the land, and we knew he was a developer, and the other side belonged to Mr. Story. So in that case, it was split.
Correct.
So, and this is a different situation. Like I think we have to look at it situation by situation. Because I know for a fact there's going to be another one come in, but the people own property on both sides of it again, and they're going to question what we're doing right now. And it makes sense it's a dead-end road. It makes sense to close that off because they own both sides of the road.
Correct.
And you might as well just put a tile drain in there and plow right over the top of the old road allowance. So I can see we have to clarify a lot of things in every different situation. So thank you, Chair Campbell.
Well, again, and with all of us sitting on the planning committee, and certainly with our public members, who has seen more than all of us combined, you know, for his years on council, I think it'd be a good exercise for us to look at this bylaw as a whole. For this tonight, then we're looking at putting that off until we see the bylaw. Is that what we're looking for?
Yeah, so I'll do a bit more research and bring back more information just to detail both of the bylaws and try to transcribe that 1859 bylaw so everybody can have a good read.
Well, I know for one, I find it interesting when we're doing this. There's been some pretty unique situations come up, and from, you know, a situation of a small parcel of land because of, you know, the vehicle couldn't get down the property. So, and there's little slivers that pop up now and again. This one's a little bit different, but it's not the last we'll see of it. So, if it's all for input from committee, I will turn it back over to you, Deputy Mayor Proctor.
Thank you very much, Chair and Councillor Campbell. Good conversation, and thank you for all that input. That was well received. Moving on to section 8.2, we'll move over to Chair Humphreys for recreation.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Proctor. And page 12 of your package, 8.2.1, Chair Report. And it's just a catch-up report for the fall. If there's any questions, you just mentioned the dance, the trivia, the Remembrance Day, excellent Remembrance Day service, and the purchase of, and looking at in beanbag. They call it cornhole, but I prefer beanbag terminology. So anyway, if there's any questions from that report, I can try and fill it in, but Ms. Eden has done a good job clarifying the revenue from the dances and the fun at the trivia night, and a very nice and respectful Remembrance Day, which was well received. And I've heard people talk about it after, and going to that earlier date helped to have a little bit more involvement from the Legion, which is very important, and also Garrison Petawawa. So again, if there's any questions, I'll be glad to answer to the best of my ability. Yes, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you for much. And cornhole, or beanbag,
Yeah.
everyone. There's just a fantastic group that runs in Renfrew, so that would be really great to see if it could be gotten going. I know the complex is getting used more and more. We drive by and it's awfully well used, and so appreciate Ms. Eden's activity. She's doing just a great job. Thinking more as we've got a forecast of horrible stuff landing on our roads and our lawns tomorrow. Any update relative to the rink surface at all? Is there any discussion?
You got to have the weather. Simple as that. It's got to be minus 10 for.
My apologies. I meant towards getting concrete
No.
and planning towards
There's
that.
Our rec meeting is on Thursday. It'll be brought up then. It's in the budget. Hope Tally or you'll be there tomorrow for that, or Thursday for that meeting.
Tally will be there Thursday morning, but I do want to remind, we do have a grant that we did apply for the concrete pads, so we're hoping to hear, well, knowing how lengthy they take to get back to municipal applicants, we likely won't hear until early spring, late winter. So I'm thinking February, March, April. And once we hear back whether we're successful or not, then we'll be bringing something back to the table, because I think it is a very good venture for the municipality to look at. Is
I totally agree. I knew it wasn't going to happen this winter. That's all I know. I think it will be spring, April 1st, before we really think about, and it takes a while to plan. You just can't pour cement in the middle of wintertime either. So it's in our minds, as we talked about. Public Works Manager Adam Knapp has got information for us. There's boards, there's advertising, and I know Ms. Eden has done a lot of research on that too, along with Adam. So I totally agree with the CAO that we will be definitely looking at it, and it is a serious, and it's an important decision to make as soon as things are good. But as soon as the weather gets cold, we're going to have a good old rink down there again. So thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Now we'll continue with you, Chair Humphreys, and I'll lean back to you for community committees. Section 8.3.1.
Yep, it's my night to talk, I guess. Yeah, Renfrew Area Senior Home Sport, we just met again on Friday, the past Friday, and Mr. Johnson's another member. A lot of things going on, but again, the Golden Age Activity Center is doing very well, over 330 members, very active, Christmas bake sales, you name it, quilt sales, bus trips and stuff. The main thing is fundraising. Our green envelopes are sitting in boxes and boxes in the room waiting for the postal strike to be over, and that's one of our major fundraisers. And it makes it very hard to keep places going. One thing that came up at the meeting was that they're still working with 2015 money for grants coming in, and even just having drivers that used to get $15 an hour are now getting $20 an hour, but yet the money coming from the Ontario Health situation for seniors is the same as 2015. Vehicles the same. Handicap van used to be 50, 60,000, now they're 90, 100,000, and things have gone out of hand, but we're working with less and less money, just like every organization. Less and less money, donations are down in a lot of areas, so they're working very hard to try and alleviate stuff, and everybody's looking for the same dollar. I just noticed that the Senior Home Sport have put on a dance on a Sunday afternoon at Horton, and they got some funding, which we applied to get a few weeks before, but they had got it, and again, everybody's looking for the donation. So they had $1,200 to start the dance with. And they supplied their own food, and I guess they had the bar, and I didn't get talking to Rachel how busy it was, but again, it's something we put on, and we couldn't get that sponsorship. So everybody's looking for that money from OPG, from Lapine Apartments, and I'm hoping, like, well, when Tomlinson's kick into gear, that we can go and ask them for $500 to put on a carnival or do that. So I think that's going to come as her job develops down there. So, and again, the Senior Home Sport's the same business where you got, they did their cookie thing, and they got fundraising from the thrift shops, and they got, they're trying everything, and we're very fortunate of Dennis and his crew there, working with everybody, but again, we're tied in. Golden Age Activity Center can have fundraising through lotteries. Senior Home Sport cannot, and that makes a big difference. And so that's pretty well a report on the seniors. Jump in this chamber, sort of the same thing, trying to find loopholes to fundraise. We've had I can see everything is going in the right direction for the chamber, and very positive awards night, well attended. We went from 50, 60 people to 120 people. We're updating member-to-member discounts. That means if you go out to Castle and you want a gallon of paint, you're going to get a little discount because you're a fellow member. So that they're pushing that. They're pushing benefits like through UPS for shipping, SO discount gas cards. Again, they're scratching for every dollar they can get. We are a business only works on memberships. Again, we cannot have lottery tickets for fundraising either. So building economic development, we work with the BIA, the Santa Claus Parade is next Saturday. Just get going here. They showcase, and we're hoping to come out and showcase Horton. That's their big one. They want to go out to Greater Madawaska, they want to come to Horton, and they want to do Admiston Bromley and showcase anything that we can promote through that. There's 145 members in the chamber, but we'd like to see some members from Horton, and we're in as a non-profit member of this group. So again, I enjoy working these meetings. I can see we've got a real good team around both Senior Home Sport and the chamber. Shouldn't have them on the same page, but we are going in the right direction. But it takes a lot of time and commitment and a lot of dedicated volunteers to come in and meetings that, on a Friday afternoon or Friday morning, and I meet at Tuesday mornings at 8 o'clock before the business is open. It's something that you develop a rapport with people, and you talk to people in the street and say, well, what's going on with the BAA? Well, there's going to be a bake sale at the seniors. So they're all back and forth, and we try to promote each other's stuff. So I think it works good that way. So that's pretty well it in a nutshell. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Proctor.
Thank you so much for that update, and I do love your passion that you bring to it and how engaged you are. Thank you. 8.3.3, back to Chair Campbell for a topic it's been a while since we discussed.
So 8.3.3, so we heard from our Chair Rob Tripp tonight, who took us through the start, and my apologies, the start and finish of where we are right now. At our last meeting, we're just making sure that our training certificates were sent in, so the training we did does not give you an actual certificate at the end to say you have completed. It just says the 6 modules you've completed, and then they give you the manual. So if they give you the manual, you had to have passed. So that was brought up. Why are we not receiving a certificate? Because we want to be able to show that if we're a board member, we have that intact. We had a delegate from Admiston Bromley, Mayor Donohue, as you'll see in our package coming up tonight. We spoke of Roma delegate going, we have a 15-minute window to speak to the minister, so we're going to be voicing our opinion on everything that Chair Tripp spoke of tonight. You know, to show where we're going forward. Two of our members, Steve Parker and Scott Broom, are putting together the work description for our new administrator, so we can get that out. Our website, we're hoping to be set up for January, you know, and launch that. So we're going to be sending out an RFP for that. We have picked our delegates for Roma, so they've put their names forward, so we will be well represented. And then our next meeting we're trying to get it stabilized that it works for all. So it seems we were probably going to switch to a third Monday of every month, but we're looking at the calendar because we don't want it to conflict with long weekends as well. So we're still a little bit of play there. Our next meeting is December 12th at 1 p.m. At the Renfrew OPP station. And then on Friday, as I had spoke to, Scott Broom and myself attended the Zone 2 OAPSB meeting, which is all of the board members can send delegates to hear what's going on. We had 3 guest speakers. Steve McGuire spoke about technologies, lawful practices, public safety, respect, accountability, moral agencies, engagement plans, risk assessment. So a lot of the, you know, the governance and the human aspect in it, and all the ethical background on it. We had an opportunity, if I keep going, we had an opportunity to meet and hear from the Chief of Police from Ottawa. He had lots of our same concerns on a bigger, larger level, of course, that over the next 3 years, including this year, they're looking to hire 400 new police officers for the Ottawa area. Just because of the size of of Ottawa now, from Combermere right up to Antrim. So when something happens outside, that takes a lot of force away. If a special event's going on, and he did, and I'll quote him, the convoy that was down there took a lot of, you know, delegations and to be there to take part in that. So you can imagine all the fundraising events that they have in Ottawa, and they're trying to pull on, you know, parking and road access and closures. So they're having a tough time with the group they have. And even that, it's the officers that are retiring. So just when they're, you know, they're fighting to get a budget that they can get enough coverage for their area, that there's people leaving on the tail end. Ottawa is now big enough that they're actually bringing in a helicopter for the first time. So they will have their own helicopter down in the market area. There's a need for a hub down there because of the whether it be theft or mental issues, there need to be dealt with one-on-one. So they're bringing in a riding patrol. So there'll be horses being brought in to do the patrols down there. Then we heard from the Treasurer's report down there, the spring conferences and, you know, everything that insurance, recruitment, you know, the boards they're forming down there, and they're looking at a lot of the same issues we're having. And again, but they are talking about more funding coming in. They couldn't speak on it, but they said there will be an announcement coming up. Should help with all policing costs. At what level and at what amount, they could not speak to. Thank you. if there's any questions or concerns. I'm sure Rob Tripp provided good information, and again, he's an open book, and let's use it. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate all the information and you being such a good representative for us in learning that and bringing it back. Move on to 8.3.4 on County Council. Lots of information that was sent out. I'm going to hit just a few key points that I believe are just really informative for us and involving to us. So happy to say that Warden Eamon has recovered from his hip surgery. There was some complications, but I'm so glad he is on road to recovery and doing well. They had a number of service awards to a number of individuals, so it was very good to see a lot of the various, everything from Whitewater Region, from Dan Poole, to the Paddler Co-op with Ryan O'Connor, and then, of course, the Gazette. All three were just thanked, and just a good ceremony for them. From an operations perspective, long time coming, certainly well before my time of engagement at county. I understand since 2017 this has been going on, but the County of Renfrew section of the Ottawa Valley Rec Trail and the Algonquin Trail has now become part of the Trans-Canada Trail Network. Few, I understand, benefits of having this is the promotion of the county's recreational trail, the economic viability, the tourism that it creates will be benefiting to all of us. And ideally, the Smiths Falls all the way to Mattawa is being accepted into the TCT, which is a mouthful, network. So lots of appreciation for all of our fellow councillors and members who have brought that to be. From a community services committee, there was a fair amount of conversation relative to the Canadian-wide Early Learning and Childcare Fund. It is, unfortunately, they have a expectation that within the County of Renfrew that the childcare needs are flat. So the number of spaces available and the number of childcare providers benefiting from this fund has actually decreased for what our need is. One of my calls to action is if there are any childcare providers in Horton that are looking to benefit from the CWELCC, to let us know, let me know. That is an ongoing conversation from county into other municipalities and jurisdictions to try to change that prediction that our county childcare needs are actually going down. Relative to development and property, the implementation of the municipal accommodation tax. When you go to a hotel, we often see the municipal tax or the town tax. That will be going forward in January within the county for a rate of 3%. It will be allocated back to the Ottawa Valley Tourism Association members that have contributed, though, before we start changing our budget expectations. Last but not least, the Mesa Warming Center is in final stages. It is looking like it will be opening up in December. It is located in Pembroke. There's a lot of information about it. It is co-located with the Ontario Addiction Treatment Center. And I'll just leave that at that. It's a great aspect of the MESA program that is benefiting all of us in county. One item that really links back into our protective services is that the overall agreement to authorize the fire services for the provision of communications services to all local fire services, I should say, within the city of Pembroke and the county of Renfrew by the Renfrew Central Ambulance Communication Center has been approved for 2 more years, starting January 1st, 2025. Last, I've got just 3 more things. Procedural bylaw was reviewed at length and discussed at length at county, both last county meeting and this one. It has gone forward as an approved element, shifting to a committee of the whole structure. So there will be 2 meetings per month on the 2nd Wednesday and the 4th Wednesday of every month, whereby there are joint services within the committee of the whole. Various reasons for that movement, but that will be starting in January. 2 more items. The The Solicitor General did provide us an update on I guess it was Saturday, it arrived in our inbox, $77 million of relief towards the OPP policed municipalities has been approved, so that's fantastic. There is and I was really good at math, and I did a lot of calculus, but I'm not understanding the formula of how much we get right now, and that was just sent on Saturday. It is in Tally's hands and other council municipalities' hands to figure out how much of that 77 million will be offsetting our OPP billing. And last, on a good note, is Taste of the Valley is coming to our neck of the neighborhood, not necessarily Horton, but December 14th at the Armories. And so appreciate the county's support of our local communities, and do hope that a number of our, residents are participating in Toast to the Valley, and I look forward to it. It was an awful lot of an update from a very long county council. Any questions or areas to elaborate on with anybody? Yes.
I would like to put a request in for you to find out at the Public Works Committee up there what they're going to do with Castleford, the archaic road, Castleford Road 20, which is it's really cobblestone is what it is. The rumor I'm hearing is they're going to do it in 2 sections. I want to put it very clearly that I think it should be done all at once and get it done with. It's the only county road in the east part of the county now that's left. They've done the River Road right through, right into Aaron Pryor and so on. And that road, if you drive up that road in a tractor, you'll find out it is absolutely ridiculous. It's the worst road in the county. Please put some input in there, and I know when Dave was there, he was doing it, but now you're in the chair there, so I'd like to make, from a rate player, the fact that, hey, let's do it and do it now. Because they've delayed it 3 years now.
They have indeed, and thank you for that. I was happy to see that Phase 1 was passed a number of weeks ago, but to your point, that's Phase 1. So I will absolutely action that. I am there.
Like, I
Actually,
just
can
don't
action
see
that right now
what
to Phase 2
they're
and Phase
doing, this
3.
piecemeal stuff, where they do a kilometer here and a kilometer there. You know, there's only 4 or 5 kilometers maybe altogether. Do it and get it done with, because you're ripping up the broadband mess all the way along and all these different things. They should, the county has just went off the tracks as far as I'm concerned since I was at the county, and even in the last few years when I was on council. They just seem to be, a little bit here, a little bit there. Let's do it and get it done. Amen.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Let me come back to you. Appreciate that very much. Okay, thank you. Any other items to discuss from county? None being heard, why don't we move to Section 9, Correspondence Summary, Information Correspondence Package. Thank you so much for being sent to us, Nikki. Any discussion to be had?
Again, our health department in the county is keeping track of all the COVID and the RSV and the overdoses, so it's always good to get caught up in all the healthy stuff that's not healthy. It's sad to see, again, the amount of vaccinations, which is a positive thing, but I mean, the overdose thing is a very sad thing, and I hope they can get that resolved. So, thank you.
Indeed. Any other comments? I will echo your concern. It was made apparent and brought forward to me recently that Petawawa actually has twice the fatalities from an opioid crisis than other communities within Ontario. And I dare say, as much as they're not immediately on our doorstep, they're part of our community. So I appreciate this information, and I think to your point of the warming center and the actual health focus, it's something we all feel embedded to do more on. Action correspondence on page 14 of our package. CAO Dillabo, may I hand this over to you to walk us through? Thank you.
Thank you. So through you, Deputy Mayor, we received a action correspondence request for support from Mayor Michael Donoghue from the Township of Admaston Bromley, looking for the Township of Horton to endorse and adopt a weighting cost share allocation by property counts as it pertains to the OPP billing model. As we heard Chair Tripp speak tonight, as well as Councillor Campbell regarding this. I'm not sure where council wants to move forward with this. We can certainly have a discussion and consideration and receive it as information, but I'll leave it up to council for discussion.
Any discussion to be had?
Sure.
Councillor Humphries?
I'm always ready for discussion. I feel that we cannot afford to pay 1/7. I think we have to pay it on a different basis. We're going to be paying the same as Aaron Prairie and Renfrew, and for 1/7, the police are in the countries, and we know what the population is in Horton, but whether they can start it, we do equal billing, and then they change it once we find that we're broke, but I figure we should do it on a population basis. Every time I look at something, we're 7%, not 1/7, which is a lot more money, so I think it has to be fair to everybody. We are small, and our bill alone we're going to be over $400,000. Like, let's face it, it's way too much money for a small township when you only have 3,000 people and 1,600 property owners. So I think it's a lot. I think we have to fight, but I don't want to pay. I don't think we should be able to pay equal. So that's my opinion. So thank you.
I wholeheartedly agree, and I have to give a fantastic shout out to Mayor Donoghue for doing this calculation for us and so many permutations for it. By his calculations, and I dare say they all look accurate, worst case is we are paying over almost $9,300 more than what we should be paying by equal proportional billing. Other side of it is we're paying not quite $7,000 less. So needless to say, we're almost paying double of what we should be paying by proportional. And to your point, value to our community based on that, I think is really hard to find. I am very optimistic that the regulations that support the legislation that came through will be fixed next year, respecting and realizing that equal within the townships was a first cut at regulations that is not going to land well. We as a township do not consume nor need the same amount of police services as a Renfrew or an Armed Prior. So to pay the same amount is just a very hold your nose and swallow type of situation. And I think while I appreciate Mayor Donoghue's to your earlier comment, CAO Dillabo, do we table this based on the report that we're bringing back from Chair Tripp, and looking where he had been, to possibly bring this into a future motion? Or would it be a recommendation that we do some form of motion or acceptance of this? More take it as information, perhaps, tonight.
Right, so because it is action resolution and they are looking for support, I do have something prepared just at this point to receive it as information. And then we can move forward with council consideration if they wish to change that to an approval or come to the board or whatnot. But I do have it just prepared to currently just receive it as information for now.
Thank you. Councillor Webster.
Yeah, I'm great stats that Mayor Donoghue had put forward to us. I'm in support of this moving forward, but I think we should tie it into the 6-month review of the Police Services Board as well. So I'll leave that in your hands how we get there with it, but I think this should be part of our obviously receive, but accept the equal sharing for now, because I think they're looking for that support. And but in the 6 month that we revisit that, if we have to make a decision tonight on the equal sharing or not, or are we tabling that?
So through you, Chair, what I was going to do, because the delegation is just for information, I wasn't prepared to recommend any council decision this evening. So at the next council meeting, I would like to bring a recommendation forward further to move forward with the equal billing for 2025 only. However, take a look at that 6-month mark. Chair Tripp did also say that they would be reporting quarterly of the budget actual versus what's been budgeted. So that will be more information. So I did incorporate that into the recommendation that I would like to bring forward to council, but that won't be until December 17th, I believe.
Okay, no,
That I
I'm
plan
fine
on.
with that, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, Chair, Councillor Campbell.
Sorry, through the chair, and I know when I sat at the board and when we first brought the numbers forth and said, we're looking at, cost sharing, equal billing, and I looked and I said, so we're gonna pay double under equal sharing, and I said, we did a round table, of course, you can understand the conversation, if it was to our benefit, I'd have been speaking highly. If it's paying more than we need, I certainly spoke my piece, and I know we had to start with the jumping off point, and that's what was brought forward. I said, well, the ground's a lot further away from my jumping off point than some. So I understand as Chair Tripp, Rob Tripp said tonight, we certainly will be looking at this again in 6 months. And I know we had to start somewhere, and I know it's difficult because again, it has to be an all or nothing kind of decision, and if we're sitting in Empire, we'd be saying we like it, but we're not. We're sitting in Horton and we're saying we prefer another method. And to quote Mayor Donahue, he says, I understand you're just getting started, but it's like you're trying to change the engine in the airplane mid-flight. So he understands that you have to start somewhere, but would like to see that run a little lower to the ground. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And given that there was discussion that should there be excess, would that be put into reserves or not? Perhaps that's part of something that we consider within our adopted motion, that any excess be brought back to townships relative to the equal but more proportional billing, or offset as a credit for future towards proportional. Just ideas. All right. Moving on, Section 10, bylaws, none being heard. We will move on to notice to file motion for our next council meeting. And Section 12, then council and staff member concerns. None being heard. We will move on to resolutions, and I'll pass it over to CAO Dillabaugh.
Thank you. So that first one, that council received the following reports as information: November building report, planning files report, and recreation chairs report from November the 14th, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Humphreys, seconded by Councillor Webster. All in favor?
That council received the community committees and county council updates as information.
Moved by Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Webster. And all in favor?
That council received the CAO clerk's information memo for December 3rd, 2024.
Moved by Councillor Webster, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. All in favor?
That council receive as information the correspondence from the Township of Admaston Bromleys regarding the request to adopt a weighted cost-sharing allocation for Renfrew Area OPP Detachment Police Services Board.
Moved by Councillor Humphreys, seconded by Councillor Webster. All in favor?
That council enact bylaw 2024-42 confirming bylaw.
Councillor Campbell, seconded by Councillor Humphreys. All in favor? All right, thank you for this evening, everybody. We are adjourned at 5:44.